KFT. Welcome to Brian Lehrer Live. We're here live every Wednesday night this fall at 7:30, and we'll be devoting much of our fall season to the New York City mayoral race as seen on TV, and we begin that series now. We've teamed up with a class of public affairs graduate students at Baruch College under professor and CUNY TV host Doug Musio to analyze just what is and isn't getting covered on local TV news. Every week, they're closely watching 4 days' worth of selected TV news coverage and the political commercials that the candidates buy during those newscasts. And every week on this program, we will show you some excerpts of those news stories and those ads to give you a sense of the narrative of the race as seen on TV. The bottom line question, is democracy being served or disserved by the local news channels? So let's look at the mayoral race as seen on TV. This week, our TV watchers monitored the 6 o'clock news on channels 2 and 4 on Thursday through Sunday. Our first clip comes from a Channel 2 story on Thursday, a day after Anthony Weiner conceded the race to Fernando Ferrer, when all 4 Democratic mayoral hopefuls joined hands to back Freddie Ferrer.
I proudly accept the nomination of the Democratic Party to be mayor.
Freddie Ferrer hasn't officially won that nomination yet, but with Anthony Weiner out of the way, there was little reason to wait. The Democrats threw a massive unity event on the steps of City Hall. All the vanquished paid homage to Ferrer.
I want a mayor who's going to do the right thing from day one and every day there beyond, and that mayor is Freddie Ferrer.
There were those who thought throughout this Democratic primary that we would destroy each other and reach this day and not be able to look at each other in the face.
We are all 100% committed to making Mike Bloomberg, millionaire, billionaire Republican Mike Bloomberg, a one-term mayor.
Our next clip is from later in that same Channel 2 story, as the mayor had a high-profile endorsement of his own to roll out from the Abyssinian Baptist Church.
But just to emphasize the uphill climb Ferrer is facing, Mayor Bloomberg traveled uptown to officially receive the backing of Harlem's most influential minister. Calvin Butts had supported Virginia Fields in the primary.
I respect Freddie Ferrer. I think he's an intelligent and capable leader and an excellent politician. It's just that we are moving in the right direction.
Our next clip is what they call Kurtzman's column by political reporter Andrew Kurtzman on Channel 2 on Friday. It begins with Weiner bowing out.
This is the time to put aside my opportunity for a runoff.
Before all the ballots were even counted, why was he so magnanimous? He said
It would be a distraction.
which was undoubtedly true. But a few days earlier, Al Sharpton entered the picture. He backed Ferrer and said,
My concern is that there's some serious allegations
about allegedly racist flyers Weiner used 16 years before. The Rev's eagerness to play the race card was a problem Weiner didn't need. Sharpton can't make a politician in this town, but he can sure break one.
So those are all horse race stories so far. Now we'll show a story from Channel 4 on Friday. This one is the only issue-oriented story that we found, but it's just a quickie.
The New York City school system is improving under City Hall's control, according to a new report released today. The Partnership for New York City, an organization of business CEOs, commissioned researchers from New York University to study school system trends since Mayor Bloomberg's reforms. Among other things, they found administrative spending is down, more teachers are certified, and overcrowding has eased. But the report also finds attendance has not yet improved and actually has declined at the high school level.
Our last clip for this week is a campaign commercial that ran in that same Channel 4 newscast on Friday. From the only candidate on TV with advertising all week, guess who?
New York City took a big hit.
It was a scary time.
It's easy to forget how scary the whole thing was. From tough times, Mike Bloomberg helps secure our future. Crime is down almost 20%. Operation Atlas protects key infrastructure and transportation. A 5-borough economic plan has created 62,000 jobs, and accountability in schools has raised test scores. Progress is being made. Determined leadership, securing our future.
So what do we learn about the mayoral race from the TV coverage? And what do we learn about politics as seen on TV? We will ask two guests tonight, Maurice or Mickey Carroll, director of the Quinnipiac University Polling Institute. They've also got the first head-to-head poll between Bloomberg and Ferrer just out today. We'll talk about that too. And Robert George, member of the New York Post editorial board. Thanks so much for joining us on Brian Lehrer Live. So, Mickey, what do you think about that TV news coverage, first of all? Fair, balanced, thorough, what?
It's professional, Brian. I thought they did a good job. It's funny, Quinnipiac has a poll on education coming out tomorrow, which will be, it'll be interesting. No, but it'll be interesting to see what they do with it. Because you do find, and I'm sure that you guys find the same thing in the papers, that when Quinnipiac puts out a horse race poll, bingo, everybody's interested. When we put out a poll on issues, and let's face it, elections are about issues. Maybe they run it, maybe they don't. Well, I got to say, the Post has been much more receptive, from our standpoint, on the issue stuff than anybody.
Why do you think that might be? I won't ask him since he works for the
I don't
Post.
know. I used to work there.
I think, for a long time, we've been focused on, going back many years, the crime, quality of life issue. And in fact, during the end of the Dinkins and into Giuliani years, we've push that issue up to the fore, and education certainly on our editorial page for many years we've talked a lot about education issues, and in the last several years the front of the section, the news section, has been pushing a lot of that as well. In fact, I thought that even though it was a very brief one, I thought that synopsis of what's been going on under Bloomberg, I thought was very good, very well presented. And I think that's his strongest single issue that he can say is completely his own.
The schools?
Yeah,
I think you're right.
Yeah, the crime stuff isn't. He's fairly enough. He's extended what Giuliani started out, but the taking control of the schools, the social promotion stuff, that is his issue that he took on.
But this is interesting to me already, because look what you're commenting on. You're reacting to the Bloomberg commercial.
No, he's reacting to the Channel 4
to the story about the partnership, right?
The partnership,
but also when you bring crime into it, that was in the commercial. He's talking about our quality of life, securing our future.
But that was because Mickey was referring to the fine Post coverage in those areas.
Of course, undoubtedly.
You guys have been good. You have good reporters.
But Mickey Carroll, one thing that was missing to me from the coverage all week on all channels was any analysis of who in the primary voted for whom.
Well, because nobody knows. Brian, we talked about this before the lights went on, but the news media have been paying for very expensive exit polls for years now. I don't even remember the last election before there was an exit. This was no exit poll. We know who voted by borough. We don't know who voted male or female. We don't know who voted by ethnic group. We don't know anything. And with the absence of the demographics, bad. At least for my part, in my judgment, very bad.
Is it the media's responsibility?
Well, they've always done it. Yeah. It's news. Somebody has to shoot it.
We were talking about that. We were talking about that before, and the media has always done it. And I haven't been around long enough to know how that actually developed. We may be getting to a point where a nonprofit, either a nonprofit or an academic institution, may need to step in.
That's you. You run a polling institute.
No, but do you know how much money an exit poll costs? An exit poll isn't. We poll by telephone. You know how Quinnipiac works. On the telephone, we call 1,500 people, blah, 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 blah. And we have students do it, and that's a nice, neat poll. Costs a lot of money. But an exit poll, You have to have hundreds of people out there at polling places. You have to do it all in one night. No, it is.
And as I said, I don't know how it came to be decided that nobody was going to do an exit poll this time, but I
put a dollar sign up. I think
well,
that's
yeah,
how they
but
decided.
I think it may have had to do something with the fact that there seemed to be so little interest in the race, and it was looking like there was going to be a very historically low turnout. But anyway,
does that serve the viewers? Does it serve the public to have an exit poll? It certainly serves the candidates.
The exit poll,
but does it tell us who'd be better at running the schools?
Oh no, but it tells you. Look, look, I'm an individual. You're an individual. You don't like to be treated as a group, but the fact is, you have to look at society as a series of groups. I mean, it's just otherwise it's meaningless. And the exit polls were put together basically so that the television people could be 30 seconds ahead of the other television people. But the demographic information that was included was useful to everybody, and it's a good thing to know.
Robert George, in the clips that we showed, who won, who lost? Was anybody given less than a fair shake?
Well, I mean, we saw. I mean, it was the way it was set up. Obviously, the winners, if you will put it that way, are clearly Ferrer and Bloomberg. Because I mean, you had the other three. It was a focus on the Unity rally, obviously, and people championing Freddie Ferrer, who 2, 3, 4 days before, all said he was the devil and so forth. I'm exaggerating, but I mean, it is always funny to see those after-election things. So I mean, obviously, Ferrer came out looking good in the sense of Weiner deciding to forego the runoff before all the votes had actually been counted, and it's always interesting to hear Democrats deciding that an election is over before the votes are counted. And so he comes off looking good in terms of bringing the party together rather quickly. That the Bloomberg ad, of course, is absolutely great, from the opening shot of Floyd Flake and another black woman after him. I mean, it makes it look immediately inclusive, and then you have all the little data points. I mean, it's a great visual.
Right. Now, it's a funny thing. One thing I noticed, and when you see the Bloomberg commercials, and you can't help but see the Bloomberg commercials, they're all over the place. But you see what they think is a problem. Quinnipiac asked about a month or so ago, does he favor Manhattan? People said, yeah, he does. We asked that again in this poll. And all of his commercials, every one of them say, mayor for all 5 boroughs, mayor for out there. They show pictures in Queens and Brooklyn and stuff. So clearly, you don't have to be too smart to think they see this as a problem, and so they're doing something about it.
And the numbers, it's 47-41. He favors Manhattan over the other boroughs, but that, given frankly that the outer boroughs think all mayors favor Manhattan in general.
They do. Since Peter Stuyvesant, they all do.
But the point being that a 47-41 for Bloomberg is clearly a win, because it makes him look like no other. It makes him look like every other mayor who has that same kind of.
In other words,
sense about
in the Quinnipiac poll today, what 47% said what?
That he favored Manhattan.
Yeah.
Including even people in Manhattan say so.
It's almost, which is almost 50-50 historically speaking, in the context.
Yeah, so, look, it's no big deal, but clearly he thinks it's a problem, or at least his people do, because they're emphasizing it on emphasizing the antithesis of it.
One thing that we couldn't actually tell from the way we sequenced the clips is that the Bloomberg commercials are all over TV all the time. Certainly for people watching the newscasts, there are newscasts with Bloomberg commercials leading into the news, at the end of the news, in the middle of the news.
The Yankee games, and I watch the Yankee games, and believe me,
you're having an interesting 2 weeks. Then
it's overwhelming. It really is.
I wonder if there's going to be some sort of an overkill thing. So one thing I was thinking of, opened the mail today, there was some Bloomberg, pamphlets in my mailbox, and I just wonder if maybe people might eventually decide, hey, wait a minute.
That he's a media bully.
Well, exactly. It's unfair, Yeah. What about the other guy?
Go ahead, Robert.
Well, the only time I thought that actually was, it was not a clip that we have here, but he had a press conference. He had a press conference on Monday where he unveiled African Americans for Bloomberg, and it was immediately discovered that three of the celebrities that they unveiled don't live in the city and don't vote there. I think if you have a little stumble like that, when people start thinking, well, you know, this guy has so much money and so forth that he even has to bring in ringers and so forth. He has to be careful of that. But I think in general, the ads are not going to be.
I put it out as a possibility.
Yeah.
I don't really.
Now, in a way, this is the easiest week of the campaign to cover, because there is an event that you can't ignore, which is that the primary happened.
Oh, yeah.
And then Weiner dropped out. That happened. And then the Democrats united behind Ferrer. That happened. The rest of the campaign, I actually think our analysis is going to be even much more interesting, because now the TV news channels are going to have to decide how much they're going to focus on the issues, the things that your poll and other polls say are really important, affordable housing, education, et cetera, and how much are they just going to follow the horse race, just follow the attacks from one campaign to the other?
Today I was at City Hall, all sorts of horse race stuff. Tomorrow we're putting out an education poll. Just interesting.
All right.
Let's see how it gets.
You did make the horse race news today.
Yeah.
But there are some issues behind that too that I want to get to. What's your top horse race headline?
Well, the headline is 14 points by Bloomberg is ahead.
What are the numbers?
50, what is it? You know, it's funny. I have so many numbers in my
52 to 38.
52 to 38, 14 points.
52 to 38.
And the components, well, let me give it to you quick, Brian, because the Democrats, 42 to 49.
For Bloomberg.
Bloomberg gets the 42.
42.
That's a lot of Democrats for the Republican candidates.
That's amazing. I mean, get 40% of the Democrats.
The other party.
Yeah.
And the other number, the Hispanic vote, 31% for Bloomberg.
Certainly not
whether or not that will actually persist, but there it is for now.
57% of Hispanics for Ferrer.
Yeah, but that's not an awful lot. He'll be the first, if he gets elected, the first Hispanic
But you also got to be careful. Notice, I mean, the Bloomberg has been very, very canny in his campaigning. He, for example, has been targeting Dominican Republicans, Dominican Republicans, as opposed, you know, whereas Ferrer is Puerto Rican and is working on that. So Bloomberg, I think, has been very smart in not looking at Hispanics as some block.
Nor are they.
Exactly, and is in fact targeting different groups. If I remember correctly, he's been to the Dominican Republic twice, and I think he's only been to Puerto Rico once.
Probably just a baseball fan, don't you think so?
The African American number. What's the African American?
Oh yeah,
number?
For Ferrer, African Americans 46 to 39. Now you know that I think I told you my grandpa once said there's a one word, Mickey, Irish Catholic Democrat, no more. Jewish voters, no more. But the black community is heavily and they're the most loyal Democrats there are.
Nationally, 95%.
Everywhere. 46 to 39. He got to do better than that.
What do you make of that split?
I mean, I'm not the best person to ask because I am a Republican, but Michael Bloomberg is not governing as a traditional Republican. In fact, he's been slapping George Bush around as much as possible in the last few days to show that he's not your average Republican. And I think one of the smartest things that Michael Bloomberg ever did was the first week or two of his administration in 2001. At an event, he went over, shook Al Sharpton's hand. And he basically, I believe, co-opted Sharpton for the rest of so you have not had any of this really stark racial incidents that Giuliani had, that Dinkins had, and that Koch had.
In fact, your poll questioned people, these likely voters who you asked, about the much ballyhooed Sharpton endorsement last weekend. And what did you find about Sharpton's impact?
There are three numbers, Brian. About two-thirds of people said it didn't make any difference. About 7% said it would make people more likely to vote for Ferrer. 20-some-odd% said it'd make them more likely to vote against Ferrer. But how many of those 27 wouldn't have voted for him anyway? I don't know. Sharpton is you can almost put a number on it. I forgot. There's some number of voters that always go, what is it, 176,000? Something like that. Whatever the number, I've forgotten the exact number, 140, whatever. Sharpton just has this tremendous following. But the other side of that is, particularly you go out in Queens and places like the white community, mostly, a lot of people don't like him.
Mickey Carroll from the Quinnipiac Polling Institute, Robert George from the New York Post editorial board. Thank you both very much. Next week, part 2 of our series on the mayoral race as seen on TV. One issue you will not find in the campaign coverage on TV or anywhere else is the controversial proposal for the largest development project ever in the history of Brooklyn. Why not? We'll tell you why not when we come back from this break. This is Brian Lehrer Live.
Sure, my neighbors Jean and Louise, they may be superheroes with superpowers, but that doesn't make them so super at saving energy and money. I mean, I like them and all, but when Jean uses that power vision to cook dinner?
Honey?
Or when Louise or Starbright tries to save a little on the lighting bill?
Mom, a little light?
I may not be able to harness the power of the elements, but I save significant cash and help the environment with appliances, electronics, and windows featuring the Energy Star label. And I improved my home energy efficiency with insulation. My thermostat? Watch this. I'm just kidding. It's programmable. I don't have to lift a finger to save on AC and heating.
Mom, Dad's making fondue again.
So discover your own energy-saving superpowers. Go to ase.org/consumers.
World famous art star.
What? Oh, there's something like it.
To make art.
What's going on in New York?
Art or something like it.
And I'm a photographer.
The life of an artist or something like it.
I say, watch art or something like it.
Welcome back to Brian Lehrer Live. We are here live every Wednesday night this fall at 7:30. Coverage of the mayoral race will not include discussion of the biggest development project ever proposed for Brooklyn, because Mayor Bloomberg and Mr. Ferrer are on the same side, even though residents and businesses in and around the proposed development site are bitterly divided. The proposed project is the Nets basketball arena and 22 acres worth of apartment buildings and office towers. This would all be in the area around the big Atlantic Avenue subway station and Long Island Railroad terminal, and last week the MTA approved sale of the development rights to the proposed developer, the Forest City Ratner Corporation, though more approvals are needed. But is this right or wrong for Brooklyn? We will get two views now, including two different ways to look at the video of their model, which we'll show you. With me first in support of the project, Marie Lewis, Vice President of BUILD, that stands for Brooklyn United for Innovative Local Development, a community-based group for jobs out of the Atlantic Yards Development Project. Hi, welcome to Brian Lehrer Live.
Hello, thank you for having us.
First, tell us more about your group. What is it exactly? Who do you represent?
First and foremost, we certainly thank God for the opportunity to be here and to talk about our perspective and where we and why we view the project in the way that we do. But Brooklyn United for Innovative Local Development represents many residents, business owners, professionals, youth who are from and around the community, who, initially when we looked at the project, we thought, well, what an exciting thing to be coming to Brooklyn. Because when you look at the site where it's planned for, it's a site that's been an economic dead zone for years. There's, for the most part, nothing going on there. It's barely safe to walk past there. But many folks in and around the target site grapple with very high rates of unemployment, poverty. Businesses are struggling to thrive and survive. And a project like this, can bring many economic opportunities for mobility.
Did your group exist before this project, or are you tied specifically to this project?
No, we certainly developed those of us who were in leadership pretty much came together around the project.
So to what extent, just by way of full disclosure, is your group funded by Forest City Ratner?
Wow. I mean, we are not funded by Forest City Ratner. From our inception, we've been asked that question all the time, and it's, you know, very interesting to us, especially many folks coming from communities of color. You know, we wonder, why is it that folks think that we cannot think for ourselves? Why is it that we can't have our own authentic perspective on this project and have one that's multi-dimensional and comprehensive?
But when we called them and told them we were going to do this segment and who would they like to refer us to as a spokesperson, they referred us to your group.
Because they know that we're, first of all, we're one of their partners now, especially since we've signed the community benefits agreement. Our group, along with the 7 other groups, making 8 altogether, who signed the agreement with them, we're partners with them on this project, especially as the community benefits agreement is concerned. So, of course, you know, if we're going to talk about the project, our perspective would be brought to bear.
And I want to come back to the community benefits agreement later on and get your take on how the community benefits. But first, let's take a look at the video press release. This is from the Forest City Ratner Corporation, and it shows a model of what this development project around the Atlantic Yards would look like. And I'm going to ask you, Marie, to walk us through what we're seeing here.
What you're looking at here are, this is basically starting at the corner. This is the Atlantic Center Mall, actually Atlantic Terminal Mall. It's directly across from the rail yards. A lot of that right there are the rail yards. And now this is one of the models for what the project would look like.
How many buildings? 17?
About 17 or so. There isn't a final project plan right now, but that's one of the schematics that's been developed to give folks an idea of what the project would look like.
Looks very dense.
Yes, it is, you know, but hey, we're in a city. This is Brooklyn, you know, by nature, this is the arena right here. Yeah. By nature, urban communities are dense.
Keep going.
That's what makes, this is the corner of Atlantic and Flatbush. This is part of the open space that's scheduled or planned.
All right, and an aerial view, obviously, and that's it. Now, one thing I noticed did not exist in that model video was any of the brownstones nearby that house a lot of the people who object. It just looked like kind of empty space other than the rail yards or rail tracks that we saw at the beginning of it. Is it a fair context?
It's definitely a fair context. And while, yes, there are many brownstones in and around the neighborhood, that is not an exclusively brownstone neighborhood. There are tall buildings there. If you go to Atlantic and Carlton, you have Atlantic Terminal Housing Projects, which is a tall building in and of itself. So this characterization of the project site as only brownstones is a mischaracterization. That is not true.
And let me bring up some of the objections that the opponents have and get your reactions to them. For example, they say it's a sweetheart deal that the MTA appraised the MTA appraised the development rights at more than $200 million. Plus, they had a bid from another group for $150 million, but they sold them to Forest City Radnor for only $100 million. Is that fair, first of all, to the writers of the MTA?
First of all, when you have to look at the entire bid package, and the entire bid package entails substantial improvements to the subway stations and improvements to the MTA site itself. And when you factor in those improvements,
that's on top of the $100 million.
Absolutely, absolutely. It far outbids what Excel's bid is. And keep in mind that no one was thinking about doing anything with that part of our community, which has been derelict and abandoned for over decades. No one was talking about doing a project there at all up until Forest City Radnor came along. So they come along, they're very open, they put out what their project is, and when we approach them in terms of, okay, we know our community can benefit from development, but will you work with us? We engaged them, they were receptive to it, and so that's a lot of what's happened.
And the opponents do complain about the density, and they say not just for the people who live in the brownstones, but also for the people who live in the taller buildings there and for a lot of the businesses. This will change the character of the neighborhood, transform it completely, and for the worse, to add so much density into what is largely a residential area.
Well, it's not only a residential area. There are businesses, there's commercial development, it's a mixed-use area if you look at it in its entire context. So that's not true. And when you look at change, first of all, a constant in life is change. And this project would make a change for the better in our community, because this change will bring thousands and countless of opportunities that many of us who live in and around the community need. When folks think that everything is okay the way it is, no, it's not. There are many of us who are suffering in and around that site. We need the employment opportunities, we need the business opportunities, we need the affordable housing opportunities, and much more that this project brings. So yes, it's a change, it's a much needed change.
I know that the opponents question this community benefits agreement, and we'll hear an opponent in a few minutes, and we'll hear why he says so. But community benefits agreement with the developer, what is that?
A community benefits agreement is, first of all, it's historic. It's never been done here on the East Coast, period, let alone New York State or New York City. So that's a very exciting development, and we're very excited to be part of this historic, groundbreaking event and happening. We pretty much looked a lot in the planning phases, and as we developed the concept and the idea at the Staples Center out in Los Angeles. There's only a handful of CBAs that exist right now in the country, and no matter what kind of critique anyone wants to levy at ours, you can't get around the fact that it's the most comprehensive agreement that exists.
What's in it?
It has concrete strategies or an outline of strategies for how we're going to connect those folks who most need opportunities, especially those who are amongst the most economically vulnerable in and around our community, to opportunities, whether it's a job opportunity, a business opportunity, affordable housing, and community amenities and facilities. You know, this is about targeting. It's not just about saying, okay, the developer says, yes, I'll work with the community. This is about a developer saying, okay, I'll sit down, hammer out this agreement with you for almost a year, and it's a legally binding agreement that codifies strategies for how do you connect people to jobs, business, affordable housing, and other opportunities.
One issue that's been controversial, and I don't know if it's actually going to be a part of this plan, is the debate over eminent domain. Will the government, at Mr. Ratner's request, come in and take property from individuals or force them to sell for what they see as the public good in this private development project?
It probably will, and it's important that we all be realistic in this, and that when we look at our country, eminent domain has always been a part of our history. That's how America grew, manifest destiny, from sea to shining sea. The country spread in large part through what is eminent domain.
By local government taking people's
what's
property?
Important here is that there isn't an abuse of eminent domain, in that owners have been very fairly compensated, well beyond market rate for their properties. And for folks who are renters who feel like this is just the area of Brooklyn where I want to live in, there are opportunities built into the CBA for those folks to be able to come back and live in the community.
But this wouldn't be for a traditional eminent domain use like railroad right-of-ways or highways. This would be for a private developer's private project, wouldn't it?
No, it's important to look at this whole issue of public use. And is it not a valid public use to help connect people to jobs, to help connect people to business opportunities, to help connect people to affordable housing opportunities? Isn't it important to help people attain the American dream of economic and social mobility? Why is that not a valid public use?
Marie Lewis from Build, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you very much.
And we'll be back in a minute with an opponent of the project. This is Brian Lehrer Live.
As I had this real rich, wonderful literary legacy, you know, in my own family. And I began to tell those stories. And in telling those stories, I think I've become much more successful. I mean, I think that intimate apparel is a direct outgrowth of being true to who I am and true to my own voice.
I have an insatiable curiosity, you know, and I am always very curious while I'm working on something. What about if I turn to this next? I guess I want to make sure that I've explored all that there is to explore.
When I write my plays, I hire these beautiful actors to stand in for myself, and they can voice my ardor in ways that I could never do in public.
This is Brian Lehrer Live. We're here live every Wednesday night this fall at 7:30. Now, we just heard from a spokesperson for the biggest development proposal ever for Brooklyn, the Nets basketball arena and 22-acre high-rise office and apartment complex for the Prospect Heights, Atlantic Avenue subway station area. Now we'll hear from an opponent of the project, Daniel Goldstein, executive director of the group known as Develop, Don't Destroy Brooklyn. Welcome to Brian Lehrer Live.
Thank you, Brian.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where do you live? How did you become so involved in opposition to this proposal?
Okay. I live in a condominium that is a 2-year-old renovation of a warehouse that would be demolished and replaced by the arena. I'm where Center Court would be. So that's how I was introduced to the project. There were rumors about it, and then it was unveiled in December 2003. Needless to say, the community in that area started organizing around it and organizing against it. That organizing grew into a number of different community groups. We lead a coalition called Develop Don't Destroy Brooklyn, and our mission is to make sure that development that happens at those yards unifies the communities that live there instead of dividing them and, as we see it, destroying a large part of the community that we love and that makes Brooklyn what's so special about Brooklyn.
So for you personally, this is not just in your backyard, this is in your kitchen.
Yes, this is in my kitchen. I work on this many hours every day, along with a lot of other volunteers. And if I was only interested in protecting my home or my backyard, I would have sold my home a long time ago when Mr. Ratner made an offer to me. But this is not a public use. It's a breach of a democratic process. It is the wrong urban design. Everything about the project is wrong. And that's why I work this hard on it. It's not about my individual home, although I do have that added benefit.
As you know, we got a video tour of the site from the last guest, and I want to give you the chance to give us sort of an anti-tour. So we're going to roll the same video. This is the Forest City Ratner video press release model of the Atlantic Yards project. So let's roll it right now, and I want you to talk us through this with your perspective.
Those are the Vanderbilt Yards, which were sold to the low bidder, Forest City Ratner. That is Forest City Ratner's Atlantic Terminal Mall, paid for with Liberty bonds. That's his Atlantic Center Mall, which houses the DMV and the Empire State Development Corporation. This is one of his older models. The newer model, which has, as you said, 17 buildings and an arena, is an outlandish Frank Gehry design. Frank Gehry works well when it's one building as a monument, but when it's 17 high-rises in the middle of what is mainly a brownstone low-rise community, that's just a mistake and an affront to the community. So you're right. You could see the scale of the neighborhoods around, and this arena will be placed at one of the busiest intersections in Brooklyn, Atlantic and Flatbush, without any planning how to handle that. Those are some nice drawings.
Of trees?
Of trees. And like I said, these are not the updated models. The updated ones were could be found in the New York Times of July 5th.
Okay. Well, we've gotten the tour and we've gotten the anti-tour. Very interesting contrast.
You're right. It did not show in the real footage. It did not show the buildings. 53 of them or so that would be demolished for the project.
So Ms. Lewis is making the point that this is not just a residential neighborhood. This is a mixed-use neighborhood. And others have said, what better kind of a place to put a major development project than over a terminal of the Long Island Railroad, a subway stop like Atlantic Avenue where a gazillion lines converge. This is the kind of place you want to put an arena and a business hub. Why not?
You should have density at a subway hub. There is an 8.5-acre rail yard there, which is plenty of room to develop residential, affordable housing, commercial space. The arena doesn't fit. Here's the issue. Or one of the issues. It is a mixed-use neighborhood right now, surrounded by historic residential neighborhoods. The footprint that Ratner has proposed is one of the few neighborhoods left in the city that is mixed-use, with light industry, retail, and residential. And that kind of neighborhood is fading from existence. This would destroy that kind of neighborhood.
Ms. Lewis didn't say it in these terms, but the implication is that there is a race and class issue here. that there are a lot of more middle class, more affluent, more white people who live in the brownstones and the condominiums and some of the other housing nearby who want their nice gentrified neighborhood, whereas the project will benefit a lot of low-income people who will get jobs.
This project is a massive gentrification project. There will be 5,000, maybe more, luxury housing units. There will be unneeded office space that won't provide jobs to the local neighborhood. The race and class issue is not real. We just had our local city councilwoman, Letitia James, just won going away her primary, 84 to 16. Her opponent was a Ratner supporter, one of the founders of Ms. Lewis's organization, BUILD. Ms. James, Letitia James, trounced her. Letitia James is a black woman. Our Congressman Major Owens is a black man, and our state senator, Velma Montgomery, all are opposed to it.
But if, in fairness, if you go around a slightly larger radius, you'll see that other members of city council who are for the project also won their re-elections. So is it not, again, a not in my backyard issue versus perhaps a greater good for Brooklyn issue?
The not in my backyard, or the NIMBYs, are the mayor, Senator Marty Golden, people who support this project, but privately, and they've told me directly, they would never want this project in their backyard. Those are the NIMBYs. We are all for job creation. We are all for affordable housing. It's about how you do it and is it cost effective. And this is the least cost effective, least efficient way to bring about affordable housing and jobs.
We saw all 4 Democratic mayoral hopefuls pile on the mayor as far as the day is long over the West Side Stadium. But all 4 Democratic mayoral hopefuls back this plan. I asked Fernando Ferrer on this program, sitting right in that chair, do you support the Atlantic Yards? And he said yes, because it will provide so much affordable housing under the deal that was struck with the developer. Why couldn't you get any of the Democrats on your side if you're on the right side?
Because they're not thinking. It's the same issue that we have on the West Side. You have a total bypass of the city council process for development in the city, which means the community is not involved. Our city council members are not involved. How Gifford Miller, the Speaker of the City Council, can say he supports this project, while at the same time that means he supports it bypassing the body he represents, is absurd. I think over the next month or so until the election, there's a possibility of changing Mr. Ferrer's position on this as he learns about it, and we will certainly, the community opposed to that project, will make that effort.
So you don't think this is a moot issue in the mayoral race?
No, not at all. It needs to be discussed in a more universal way about development in the city. Overdevelopment is some polls that I've seen a few months ago is maybe the #1 issue, and both candidates had better speak about it. They better speak about community-based planning, overdevelopment, and how development is done in this city. Is it going to be from the top down, where corporations, real estate development agencies drive development, or is it going to be a process that includes communities in a genuine way and our elected officials, which this process does not include?
And before we run out of time, where do you think your cause stands now? I saw online that you took great umbrage at something that I said on my radio show a few months ago about your group and the opponents of the project becoming increasingly isolated. And that was not to pass judgment on the merits of your case, but to say it looked like, with so many politicians, including the leading Democrats, coming out against, all 3 major New York daily editorial boards, some grassroots background kind of groups like Acorn striking deals with the developer. It looks, at least from a political analysis standpoint, like you're increasingly isolated. How do you see it?
The community surrounding that area is opposed. The city is opposed. The most recent poll, the Times poll, has 61% opposed to the Arena project, yet the Times didn't actually report that. This battle is going to head to court on eminent domain, on environmental impact, on process. It's going to court, and I think as the months go, as we move forward, we will gain more political support for our position. We are already gaining some in the area on the state level, and Mr. Silver and Mr. Bruno have yet to take a real look at this. Like on the West Side, they didn't make a decision till the end. They need more information. That's what they tell us. And when they see the full story, we believe if it goes that far to their board, that they may vote it down. And that's one of our efforts. Look straight into the camera and take 30 seconds to tell Freddie Ferrer why to take up this issue as his cause in the mayoral race. Mr. Ferrer, you should know that the way development is being done in this city, in all 5 boroughs right now, is anti-community, anti-citizen, anti-democratic process. It is unfair. if you want to stand for the working people, and that's true, the working people of the city, and pretty much all the people of the city, you should take a close look at this, and at the very least, the process, as he said months ago, the process is atrocious, and he should keep saying that. Support affordable housing, but the process is one that if he is elected mayor, he can't stand behind that process.
Daniel Goldstein from Develop, Don't Destroy Brooklyn. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Coming up next, we'll meet a remarkable New Yorker from the Bronx, Majora Carter, head of the group Sustainable South Bronx. She just won a MacArthur Genius Grant. This is Brian Lehrer Live.
Join us every Friday for Times Talks, featuring celebrated talents and thinkers in extraordinary conversations with New York Times journalists. This Friday, a very fortunate event with author Lemony Snicket, also known as Daniel Handler. Times interviewer Julie Solomon, culture reporter.
Political Assassination, a series of documentaries trying to understand the logic of political killings.
Mondays at 9 a.m., 3 p.m., and 9 p.m., and Saturday at 11 p.m. on CUNY TV, Channel 75.
Hi, I'm Matthew Goldstein. New Yorkers are choosing CUNY colleges in record numbers. CUNY has a world-class faculty and state-of-the-art facilities. Come visit our campuses located in every borough. Talk with career advisors and financial aid experts. Contact us at cuny.edu or call us at 1-800-CUNY-YES. CUNY will invest in your future. Invest in CUNY now.
This is Brian Lehrer Live. We're here live every Wednesday night this fall at 7:30. Now we get to meet a remarkable New Yorker. She is Majora Carter, head of the group Sustainable South Bronx, and she just won one of those MacArthur Genius Grants, which means she gets $100,000 a year for 5 years to support her in her work. Welcome, Einstein.
Thank you.
So tell our viewers about yourself first. Did you grow up in the South Bronx?
Mm-hmm. Born and bred in the South Bronx, in Hunts Point, actually.
Hunts Point.
Mm-hmm.
And what was it like there when you were a kid?
Early years, probably before I turned 7, it was very, very much a community. But around the time I turned 7, like, everything changed. That was what I discovered many years later, was the beginning of the years of disinvestment. You know, arson became like the thing that happened on a daily basis in my neighborhood. Like one very definitive summer of my life, like I watched the buildings on both ends of my corners, you know, burn down. You know, my brother was killed, the product of the drug wars.
So sorry.
Thank you. And it was, in this, just, I watched my neighborhood like disappear, like overnight.
Where do you live now?
Hunts Point, still.
And what's it like now?
Now, I'm very pleased to say, we are a community that, you know, has really gone through a tremendous transformation. There was through really dedicated community activists. There was in the 70s and the 80s, lots of money was funneled into the community in order to rebuild the housing. So lots of people came back to the neighborhood. What did not happen, unfortunately, was there was also a lot of business disinvestment, you know, during the 70s, and the problem was there were lots and lots of polluting facilities that came into the community around that same time.
So it's come back?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. As far as people go, yes, we've pretty much regained almost all of our population.
Now, you have been on some educational journey. You started out at PS 48 and IS 74, I have that right?
You've done your homework.
And the Bronx High School of Science.
Yes.
And then Wesleyan University in Connecticut, beautiful campus, very different from Hunts Point. And then you got an MFA, Master of Fine Arts, at NYU.
Right.
So, I don't know, no wonder you got a Genius Grant.
Oh, yeah, that'll do it. It was my creative writing that actually helped me write grant proposals to do the work that I'm doing now, because you have to be very creative.
So tell us about Sustainable South Bronx.
SSB is an organization that's very simply dedicated to improving the quality of life of the South Bronx by creating sustainable environmental and economic development projects. So we work to counteract all of the environmental polluting debilitating facilities that are in the community by actually creating alternatives, such as greenways or bikeways, such as living wage jobs that don't degrade the environment. We are actually developing a community market as well in our neighborhood. So just ways that most folks did not really think about, ways to transform their own community. We're working on projects to do that.
Now this is so interesting because there's a traditional way of thinking that says environmentalism is kind of a white middle class, white wine kind of issue, and that people of color from places like Hunts Point don't get involved in these things so much because they're concerned necessarily with their survival, and that if anything, the environmental purists work against some of the jobs, work against some of the things that would more evenly distribute income. How do the two come together for you?
I mean, I'm just as concerned about the spotted owl as, you know, as the next person. But quite frankly, I'm much more interested in people. And one of the challenges that we have is actually helping people understand that there is such a thing as an urban environment, and it is all around you, whether it's made of concrete or whether it's, you know, in the Adirondacks. And because it is in an urban environment, it is really challenging. However, human needs are still the same. You know, access to things like clean air, you know, quality, affordable food, you know, that's not toxic, you know, things that actually make it possible for people to actually physically exercise and not feel like they're about to get hit by a truck. You know, these things are actually what makes a community more livable.
Your degree, as I mentioned, from NYU, your master's degree is a Master of Fine Arts, which seems like a world away from environmental science and political activism.
Oh yeah, and it was. I mean, the only reason why I moved back to my family's house in the Bronx was because I was going for my degree and needed a cheap place to stay. And it was around that time that I became pretty politicized about the impacts of the environmental burdens that my community faced at the time. Because prior to that, I left my neighborhood and had absolutely no intention of returning. But coming back and realizing that the city and the state were planning on, once again, using the South Bronx is just yet another repository for some of the
So how are you
worst
seeing
facilities.
environmental impacts on people?
In particular, public health. We've got one of the world's highest asthma rates. We also have one of the city's highest diabetes rate, which is directly related to the fact that people are not getting quality food in their neighborhood, nor are they exercising. And people aren't doing that, for the most part, because they don't feel that it's safe to actually get out and walk. It's not, or even just move around their own neighborhood. It's not because they feel like it's unsafe, because the crime rate actually is going down.
So if you won one of these MacArthur Genius Grants, which, by the way, I should mention, her grant writing skills could not have contributed to, because you can't apply for those grants. They have to just decide that you are worthy. So they decided that you are worthy. And if you won one of them, then you must have had some impact already with your work. What do you think you've had an impact on?
We were able to take old abandoned waterfront properties that the community hadn't seen in years and turned them into waterfront parks, which basically heralded the waterfront development transformation of my neighborhood. We created an ecological restoration job training program that trained, you know, at-risk young people completely underemployed in the field of environmental restoration and to get them into well-paying jobs. We are actually helping to create something called a recycling industrial park, which actually looks at the city's solid waste crisis and sets up a place where the waste of one company becomes the raw material for another. We're building a green roof on top of our office building, which is basically a sustainable building technique, which actually does things like has energy efficiency consequences as well as stormwater management, and also provides habitat for birds and there's all sorts of beautiful things like that.
That project, I think, has a really cool name, which is Green Roof, Cool Roof. Is that right?
Actually, it's called Green. It's the new black.
So you won the MacArthur Genius Award. What do you actually get? Just the cash?
That's
enough.
Honestly, I think the cash is a beautiful thing. I'm not going to lie about that.
It's $500,000.
It's $500,000. However, what it really does mean is that it actually supplies the kind of spiritual value that says that the kind of work that we've been doing is really worthy, and that folks are actually expecting me to continue this kind of work because it does have an impact on the people of my community, and hopefully will have an impact beyond as well.
This is the award that creative people dream of, because besides the money, it so validates your work. So what does it mean to you on that level?
It means that people are actually watching, you know, and that's what I was told. We've been watching you for a while now. And it really made me think, okay, I'm actually doing something that's going to have an impact that's going to go well beyond my years on this earth.
One thing that's put Hunts Point in the news recently is the Fulton Fish Market and the changes there. What do you think about that, and is that important to the neighborhood one way or the other?
I mean, it does have an impact. It will bring more trucks to the neighborhood, which will probably contribute to the asthma rate in the neighborhood. But there is also, I think there's a possibility there to think about, you know, engaging the business community in a way where they recognize that they're part of a community. And it's not just the business community and the residential community. It's not a kosher kitchen. You know, people actually do need to get together, and that is something that we're definitely hoping to do as well.
So again, a trade-off between jobs and environmental purity?
I wouldn't call it a trade-off at all. I think that there are ways of, we're not interested in creating jobs that degrade the environment in any way. I think that there's a way you can do that, you have to be very creative about it, but the bottom line is we don't necessarily pay that much attention to it in this country, but frankly we're not looking to this country for those kind of opportunities that can support human health as well as job creation.
What would make you proud 5 years from now to look back after you get your $100,000 grant each of the next 5 years and say, I used my MacArthur Fellowship to accomplish this?
Let's see. That's a really tough question because I haven't quite decided. All I know is that I'm really interested in creating more sustainable environmental economic development projects and making sure that I can figure out ways to make that happen in ways that can be replicable, not just in the South Bronx, but beyond. Because quite frankly, it's the folks who live in low-income and or low-income communities of color that bear the burden of this country's dependence on fossil fuels and all of the other issues that we're all dealing with, case in point, New Orleans.
Will this money transform the nature of your work?
I'd do this work even if I didn't get the MacArthur. I mean, it just made just a little bit or a lot easier for me. But no, I don't think it's going to. What it will do is open some very serious doors for me because, you know, a MacArthur Genius Award speaks and people start to listen. I'm amazed at just the response I've gotten over the past
What's an
day.
example of a door that you'd like to see open as a result?
Let's see. You know, I would really like to think about the policy initiatives that need to be made in the city in terms of green building and sustainable building development, and really creating incentives so that folks can actually do them, because those things impact, you know, low-income communities of color first. But the ripple effect is that it affects absolutely everybody. So when we talk about building extra power plants, you know, or when the city talks about building extra power plants, we actually talk about, well, how can we conserve and can we do sustainable projects that actually prevent the building of these plants?
We have 30 seconds left. I see you're also a fellow at the Drum Major Institute, which is the think tank that Freddie Ferrer ran the last 4 years. So I'm not going to ask you who you're supporting for mayor. But do you think your work implies issues that the mayoral candidate should be addressing real quick?
Of course, and it absolutely should be. I've challenged Mayor Bloomberg himself, you know, on actually not looking at sustainable development as an issue, you know, for the city of New York in terms of dealing with so many of the crises that we're dealing with. You know, and I hope that they're both actually looking at it in that respect.
Majora Carter, winner of one of the latest MacArthur Genius Grants, just announced the other day. Thank you so much and congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And that's it for this week's show. Keep joining us this fall every Wednesday night at 7:30. Next week, we'll continue to monitor the mayoral race as seen on TV. And check out my radio show every weekday morning at 10 on WNYC New York Public Radio at AM 820 and FM 93.9. Tomorrow, we will ask, whatever happened to the truth? Have a great night.